What's up, everyone? It's been a while, so let's talk hand pumping. How much of a pain it is. So in this video, I'm going to give you. I got a lot of details here I want to kind of go over because there are some people that are interested in hand pumping. Okay, first one, how hard is it? We're going to go over how hard is it. You know what the equivalent exercise level is. Is it like walking, running, doing kettlebells, or weightlifting? I'm going to give you a heart rate, like my heart rate, where it actually kind of fits into the scheme of things of doing one cycle of pumping, and we'll get into that piece. The other part is how many pumps does it take, and how long does it take to pump up, let's say, a small tank, Airgun 500cc, and then a 74, 78 cubic foot tank and a 98 cubic foot tank. How many pumps are we looking at and how much time? We'll also talk about the physical aspects, the form, any kind of ailments you have, some things to keep away, because yeah, there's some tricky things with these pumps it's different than pumping up, let's say, a bike tire. And then lastly, I'm going to kind of sum things up with the suggestions. Who would this be for, or what type of shooting would I suggest this for? Because there's some certain air guns and a certain type of shooting that I definitely wouldn't suggest hand pumping. So let's get in that. The best pump I've found out there is, I think, the Hill Mark 5 or version 5. It's about $250. I've done a bunch of different research trying to look at the pros and cons to a lot of the pumping, some of the best pumps. You want an air filter on it, a water filtration, because that condensates and gets into your tanks. But let's get into the number one question is heart rate. Now we're looking at roughly, I think, about 138 for brisk walking for me, about 160 for kettlebell, and about 170 or so, 180 beats for running. Let's say when I used to do 5Ks, 3Ks, 5Ks, and stuff like that. So where does the pumping come in? It comes in above walking, kind of right around kettlebell if you're warmed up. So you're, anywhere from 140 to that 150-ish range. And that's where you're going to have to kind of pace yourself, because this isn't like pumping up a bike tire. It's actually a lot more intense as far as on the muscles, and you have to kind of cycle it. You can't go in and do 200 pumps. You're going to wear yourself out, but the pump actually heats up. So a lot of people suggest 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, or 10 minutes on, 1 minute off, whatever you feel comfortable with, 40, 50 pumps. Yeah, then you kind of give it a rest. So the muscles it stresses, this is the thing you need to kind of watch your form. Now, if you have shoulder impingements, back issues, if you're kind of hunched over working on this pump like you do a regular bike tire pump, you're going to have some back issues. And actually, I was looking at some of the reviews, and a guy said it affects his back. I think he's about 6'2", 6'3", and I can see it depends. You kind of have to go straight in line, but if you got tricep issues, shoulder issues, any of that kind of ailments, back stuff, you're probably going to feel it a little bit, so your form's going to definitely help out with that. And obviously you want to talk to your doctor. Most of us guys that are in air guns, I don't know what it is, but a lot of us guys are like 50 plus, and it just depends on your health, and you know what you can do, but just know, that heart range is going to be probably well over 140 by the time you're pumping up and down and doing all that stuff. So how long does it take, using this pump, how long does it take to pump up an air tank or a typical air gun? Now this is the strange thing, because you're going to hear a lot of variations, just like how hard it is to use, what the exercise level is. I'll give you a few indications. This is about a 490cc tank from zero, fresh, empty. I think it takes about 400 pumps. And an XR, I think it's a Brocock XR, just a little gun. I think it's 65cc. I think that takes about 35 to 40 to get it up to the different things. And this is where things are really kind of confusing, because on the Air Force tanks, you have a 3,000 fill, 3,000 PSI. Generally, you shoot it down to 2,000. So it's less than, let's say, if you're shooting FX Impact, which is a 3,600 PSI fill, down to 150 bar, which is around 2,000, 2,100 PSI. So there's differences there. You get more shots in the impact, but you also have to kind of go up when you're pumping the tank. That's where it becomes actually more difficult. From 0 to 150 bar, it's fairly easy. After 150 bar, you really start feeling it. And then, man, when you get up probably around 200 bar, that last 2 or 3 inches, you're like grinding it down. And maybe it's just this pump, but it really kind of takes a slower pace. But so for something like this, you're going to be talking a zero fill, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 pumps. And so I went through a different calculation. There's refilling it to reshoot it and then filling it from scratch, which is like filling a huge 74 cubic foot tank from scratch with this pump is going to be a very long haul, because I'll give you the indications of how many pumps it is just for the usability range, which is like 150 bar up to 250 bar. That's what a lot of people are using these pumps for, is they'll say how long. So a typical recharge time is like 40 or 50 pumps for an Air Force air gun, going from 2,000 to 3,000. Marauders, 40 to 50 pumps. So on average, filling your smaller, like a Marauder gun, something, a Disco, an Air Force, a Hot Sun, something along those lines, you're talking 45 pumps. Something as such as like an Impact, an M3 Impact, going from 150 bar to 250 bar, now you're looking at 200 pumps, because you got to go up in pressure. And also, in addition to that, it's a much bigger tank. It's like a 580 cc tank. And so a lot of guys are saying about 150 to 200 pumps. Yeah. And then that kind of equates out, how much does it take? So I did a little calculation, because I'm sure as heck I'm not going to try to fill this up from 150 bar to 250 bar. How much will it take? So if we look at this as a 4,500 PSI tank, and this will, pump it up to 4,500 PSI. I went out to Airguns of Arizona, their tank refilling. And so using this at a 4,500 PSI fill, we're looking, dropping it down to roughly, I think 250 bar, which is the max at that. So you get about, out of this tank, about seven fills, 8 full fills before you start going below that 250, which equates to, let me see, 1,600 pumps. So it's 1,600 pumps, and calculated out anywhere from 13 seconds a pump, anywhere from 6 seconds a pump to 13 seconds a pump, which is about 45 pumps, is roughly, you're talking 10 minutes, maybe 15. So in that case, you're spending anywhere total time for an air gun, it's like 10 or 15 minutes for 45 pumps. 200 pumps, you can extend it out. 1,600, you're looking at anywhere from 3 hours to 6 hours for this tank. And a 98 cubic foot tank is roughly 4 hours to 8 hours of continuous pumping. Now that's going off of anywhere from 6 seconds to 13 seconds per pump, depending on how fast you work it. But just realize you cannot work this like a regular bike pump where you're just going super fast. It slows you down and you're grinding it down, especially when you go over, as I mentioned, 200 bar. You're definitely going to be really pushing it hard. All right, guys, so knowing all this, recommendations, is it worth it? Is it worth it owning a hand pump? That's one of the things. I have it as a backup. It's not even a very good, it was the best you could buy back then a few years ago. But I would say this, if you're shooting big bore where you're running through a ton of air, no, there's no way. I mean, unless you're just going to hunt. But if you're enthusiastic about shooting at the range or anything like that, don't even bother. Now, I have another video where I talk about fills per shot per a gun on this type of stuff. How many shots do you get out of these air tanks, depending on your caliber and your type of air gun? And I still kind of stand by that. If you're looking at pumping, I would really limit it to something along the lines of a 177 or 22, very low power. Now, a 177 in 12 foot-pounds, maybe 16 foot-pounds, 17 max, it's pretty efficient. You can get out to, anywhere from 700 feet to a second to like 900 feet per second, depending on your pellet or your slug. And you can still get some great shot count per fill. For instance, my Red Wolf gets like 200 to 400 shots on the FX Impact with one fill on a big fill, if you're just shooting 12 foot-pounds, you could get like 600 shots or something, like 700 shots. And yeah, so if you get 10 fills, 9 fills off that, now we're talking you're in the thousands of shots per filling this up. Now your tank, you could spend, maybe 40, 50 minutes, I think tops, filling that up, and you could have anywhere from 500 to 1,000 shots on one fill for an impact if you're using it, sparingly, or a target or a field target rifle like the AirArms FTP 900, get you about 150 shots per fill. Has a little cylinder. You could hand pump it or fill one of these and you'd be good for this season, especially with that. I think you could probably run one of these big 74 cubic foot tanks for a season if you're shooting something in the 177 area, maybe a 22 if you really back it off. Above that, when you get to 25 cal, 30 cal, 357, 457, all that stuff, yeah, man, you're gonna get so little shots. I think from the FX guns or the Air Force guns, we're looking like 3 shots to 10 shots per fill. And then it's going to take you 10 or 15 minutes to pump it up and to get after it and all that. So you do have to worry about your heating. So you have to take it easy. And the parts to replace this, from everything I've seen, is pretty affordable. It's just, is it for you? You're talking the physical aspects and you're talking limited amount of shooting for your caliber. And I hope that clears it up. If you've got other questions of how much shooting you can do, check out this other video I have up here. And if you guys got comments, questions, write it down below, hit that subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you next week.